He said the words so calmly that they didn't shatter. They simply emptied something inside her. You are not my family. The sentence didn't echo, it just settled like a cold stone, and for a moment she wondered if the room had always been this silent, or if his voice had taken all the sound with it. Arya stood in his office doorway, the city lights stretching behind her, like a world moving forward without mercy. She had rehearsed a different moment, a different version of him. One who paused, one who asked, one who cared. But Nathan Hale, the millionaire CEO who shaped empires with his decisions, didn't even blink. He simply folded his arms as if emotions were tasks he could decline on a schedule. Arya's breath trembled, though she tried to steady it. She came to share something important, something meant to change both their lives. But his eyes held the chill of someone who had decided long ago what mattered and what didn't. And she, painfully, didn't. For a heartbeat, she considered pleading. Just one question. Just one attempt to remind him of the late-night conversations, the laughter they once shared, the quiet connection that felt real. But then she looked at him again, unchanged, unmoved, and realized she would be speaking to a wall made of ambition. A small part of her still searched for softness in his expression, even in the faintest corner. There was none. So she nodded, because dignity was the only thing she could carry out of this office. She turned toward the hallway, her pulse loud in her ears. But before leaving, she placed a gentle hand over her stomach. Not to reveal anything, just to remind herself she was not alone. Outside, the air felt colder, heavier, almost too real. Yet she whispered a quiet promise to the life growing within her. With or without him, I will choose strength. The apartment she found wasn't much, a tiny place above a bakery where mornings smelled like warm bread and evenings hummed with quiet loneliness, but it became her shelter. Yet even in this new life, Nathan's words followed her like a shadow she didn't invite. Still, Arya refused to let those words decide her future. She worked long hours designing digital art for small clients, taking every job she could just to keep the lights on. And every night, when her back ached and her eyes burned, she would place her hand on her growing belly and whisper, "We're building something better." Slowly, but surely. But the real shift came months later, on a day that should have been ordinary. She was sketching near the window when a sudden pain tightened across her stomach, sharp enough to pull a gasp from her chest. Panic rose instantly. There was no one to call, no one waiting. She gathered her bag with trembling hands and rushed down the stairs, hoping she wasn't too late. The taxi ride felt endless. Every streetlight a countdown she couldn't control. Hours later, when her son arrived with a soft cry that filled the room with life, she felt something powerful rise within her. Not fear, not regret, but a fierce, steady love. She named him Liam. When his tiny fingers curled around hers, everything changed. Her world didn't feel abandoned anymore. It felt rebuilt. But what she didn't know was that this child, with eyes startlingly familiar, would one day bring her face to face with the man she walked away from, and the truth he once refused to see. 2 years later, Arya thought she had finally learned how to breathe again. Life wasn't easy, but it was hers, built piece by piece with late-night work, whispered prayers, and the soft laughter of a little boy who made every hardship feel lighter. Liam had his own way of filling silence with joy, tapping on windows to greet birds, hugging strangers' legs in grocery stores, giggling as if the whole world secretly belonged to him. But the one thing Arya could never ignore, no matter how hard she tried, were his eyes. That same deep, calm blue that once looked at her without feeling. Nathan's eyes, she didn't speak of it. She didn't plan to. She believed she had left that part of life behind. But fate rarely respects the boundaries we draw. One afternoon, while waiting for a friend near a crowded plaza, Liam tugged free from Arya's hand and ran toward a fountain, bubbling with excitement. Arya followed quickly, yet the moment she stepped forward, she froze. A familiar figure stood across the plaza, tall, confident, sharply dressed like the world still moved according to his decisions. Nathan. For a second, she thought her mind was playing tricks on her. But then his gaze landed somewhere near the fountain, and stopped Liam, her child. Their child. Nathan's expression changed, subtly but unmistakably. Something in him recognized what he saw, and Arya felt her heartbeat stumble as the past and present collided in one single, irreversible moment. Nathan didn't move at first. He stood like someone caught between two versions of reality, one he controlled and one he never expected to face. Arya's breath tightened as she watched his eyes follow Liam's tiny footsteps, watched confusion flicker into recognition, and recognition sharpen into something deeper. Something he couldn't hide even if he tried. Liam, unaware of the storm rising between adults, splashed a hand into the fountain and laughed. A sound so pure it made Arya's chest ache. And then he turned, just for a moment, and those blue eyes lifted toward Nathan with innocent curiosity. It was enough. Nathan's face shifted, almost imperceptibly, but Arya saw it. A crack in the armor he wore so confidently, a question forming, a truth unfolding. She wanted to grab Liam and leave before Nathan could speak, before he could reopen wounds she had worked so hard to close. But her feet felt rooted to the ground, held by fear, by anger, by something she didn't want to name. Nathan finally stepped forward. Not with authority, not with the rigid confidence she remembered, but with uncertainty, like a man approaching a door he had once slammed shut. "Arya?" His voice didn't sound cold this time. It sounded unsure, human. Every instinct screamed at her to turn away, to protect the life she built without him. But when he glanced at Liam again, some unspoken question hanging between them, she knew this moment could not be avoided. Not anymore. Liam toddled back toward her, reaching for her hand, and Nathan's gaze followed the movement with a weight she couldn't decipher. This was the moment she had feared most. In the moment he could no longer ignore. Nathan stood only a few steps away now, but the distance felt like years of choices stacked between them. Arya instinctively shifted, placing a protective hand on Liam's shoulder. She didn't raise her voice, didn't lash out. She had outgrown that version of herself, but the quiet firmness in her gaze warned him not to cross boundaries he once dismissed. Nathan swallowed, as if words he had never learned how to speak were suddenly heavy on his tongue. "Is he began, but the question broke apart before it reached the air. Arya didn't answer. She wasn't ready to. She wasn't sure she ever would be. Instead, she lifted Liam into her arms, holding him close as if anchoring herself to the life she built without permission from anyone. Not even him. For a moment, the noise of the plaza faded, replaced by an uneasy stillness. Nathan looked at her, not with the certainty of a powerful CEO, but with the searching confusion of a man realizing he might have made the greatest mistake of his life. "I didn't know," he finally managed, voice low, almost strained. But Arya shook her head gently. "You didn't want to know," she replied, her tone calm but unyielding. The truth, spoken softly, still carried weight. Nathan exhaled, a long, slow breath, as if the past 2 years suddenly pressed down on him at once. His eyes returned to Liam, those familiar blue eyes, and something in his expression shifted again, deeper this time. A mixture of regret and something almost like longing. He took another step closer. "Please, give me a chance to talk," he said, not demanding, not controlling, just requesting. But Arya stepped back, heart pounding for reasons she couldn't untangle. She had survived 2 years without him. She had built a home, a life, a strength she never knew she had. Allowing him into that space now felt like opening a door she wasn't ready to unlock. Liam reached out his small hand toward a passing balloon vendor, unaware of the emotional ground shaking beneath his tiny feet. Arya pressed a kiss to the top of his head, trying to steady herself. Nathan waited, eyes full of questions she wasn't ready to answer. This time, she was the one who turned away, not from fear but from the courage of choosing her own timing. "Not today, Nathan," she said quietly. And as she walked away with Liam in her arms, Nathan didn't stop her. He could only watch the family he once rejected slip through his fingers. Again. For the next few days, Nathan couldn't escape the moment in the plaza, Liam's blue eyes, Arya's steady strength, the truth he once rejected now standing before him in the form of a child who looked so much like him, it was impossible to deny. Meetings blurred, documents went unread, and the office that once felt powerful now felt painfully hollow. He had built a world where emotions were optional, But now his mind kept circling back to a little boy who had laughed by a fountain, and the woman who carried both the burden and the beauty of raising him alone, Arya, on the other hand, tried to return to routine, morning walks, work deadlines, Liam's endless questions about birds, buses and bubbles. But Nathan's sudden reappearance had shaken something inside her she didn't want to admit. Not longing, no. She had learned to let go of that. It was fear. Fear that he would walk back into her life with the power to disrupt everything she had sacrificed so much to build. Fear that his presence might confuse the little boy she had protected since the day he took his first breath. Fear that he might claim a place he never earned. But fate wasn't finished. 3 days later, as Arya picked Liam up from his daycare, she stepped outside and found Nathan waiting near the entrance. No suit, no bodyguards, no polished formality. Just him, his posture uncertain, his expression conflicted. "I'm not here to force anything," he said before she could speak. I need you to know I'm not the same man you left." Arya didn't reply. Words were easy. Change was not. Nathan continued, voice quieter than she had ever heard. "When I saw him, everything inside me stopped. I didn't see a complication. I saw a chance I never realized I wanted," he hesitated. "A chance to be better. A chance to be present." Arya looked down at Liam, who was busy examining a small pebble as if it were treasure. She knew life didn't hand out perfect endings. She also knew forgiveness wasn't something earned in a single conversation. But she couldn't ignore the sincerity in Nathan's voice, so different from the man who once said she didn't belong in his future. Liam looked up then, spotted Nathan, and waved with the innocent joy only a child possesses. Nathan's expression softened instantly, pure, unguarded warmth. Arya exhaled slowly. "I'm not promising anything," she said finally. "But you can walk with us. Just walk, nothing more." Nathan nodded, relief flickering across his face, and as he took those first hesitant steps beside them, not as a CEO, not as a man who once turned away, but as someone trying, truly trying. Arya realized this story wasn't about returning to the past. It was about seeing what the future might become.